Good morning from Milano. I woke up yesterday morning and one of my first thoughts is the exact same one I have pretty much every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those are the days, of course, that Dear Constance episode drops. One of the first things I think is, what is today's episode about? Given that I record the episodes and publish them well in advance of the actual day of the drop, I have to think about it like, what is it? And Monday's episode was originally entitled Circling is Empowerment, Connection, and Perspective, or something like that. And as I lay in bed, I thought to myself, oh my Lord, Constance, you're so serious all the time. And if I'm honest, something I've promised to myself that I will always be on this podcast, if I'm honest, I went down a rabbit hole of self doubt. And that record is full of greatest hits. Among them, You're Too Earnest, Lighten It Up, You're Too Serious. I think you get the drift. And here's the thing, I record in the morning, and that is when I have a heightened state of awareness and quiet. And naturally, I gravitate to topics which are more self reflective and spiritual and contemplative in nature. And those who know me know that I can be silly, superficial, spontaneous, and that one of the things I value most is total mindlessness. So, yeah, I'm not always serious. Like everybody else, my life is simply a tapestry, and the weave is rich and varied, woven with many different threads, some silly, some serious, some spiritual. Anyway, as I was on that negative thread, I remembered something that I heard on Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act. That's a book that I reference often because I love that the chapters speak about so many things that are universal. He talks a lot about artists, but he uses the word artist very broadly. And when he talks about art, he means anything that is creative. Art is anything that you bring yourself to, writing, the spoken word, music, cooking, poetry, anything. He considers the way we lead our life as a creative act. And that can take many forms. And as such, we are all artisans. We are all designing and crafting our lives. And some of us are, to a greater or lesser degree, focused on different aspects or different avenues of artistry. That is something that took me decades to understand. And actually, that idea is a bit of a regret of mine because I never took myself seriously. In fact, I remember one day when I went to therapy, the therapist said something to me that really stopped me in my tracks. And she said this: You're not taking yourself seriously, Constance. You're not valuing and respecting your own creative process. Her comment and observation was real cause for pause and actually served as a turning point for me. And I started taking this idea of Dear Constance more seriously. Anyway, I digress, and I want to go back to Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, because I remembered there was a chapter called Self Doubt, and I went back and listened to it. And he made a very important distinction in talking about self doubt. He said, It's one thing to doubt yourself, and quite another thing to doubt your work. Doubting your work would sound something like, That's not good, or I can do better. I don't think that's good enough. Doubting yourself is, I can't get anything right. I'm incapable of singing, or I'm incapable of writing a good song, or whatever it is. They're very different, doubting yourself and doubting your work. Doubting your work can actually push you to greater heights, to reach for excellence, while doubting yourself lands much differently in your nervous system. And given that self doubt is universal, nobody gets to escape some moment, some area, or time or place in their life when self doubt creeps in. I really like that distinction between doubting yourself and doubting your work. They're very different. Oftentimes, when we doubt our work, it's a vulnerability. It's a moment of vulnerability. And when we're doing something that we care about, vulnerability is part of what gives our work its unique flavor. It's the very thing that gives our work its uniqueness, its own stamp. Anyways, back to the story. In my moment of self doubt, I went back and listened to the episode, and I not only renamed it, It's Hard to Be a Good Person, but I also made an important note to self that when self doubt creeps in, it's important that I make the distinction and think about whether I'm doubting myself or doubting my work. Another thing before I forget, I want to direct those of you who do not know Heidi Clements to go look up Welcome to Heidi on Instagram. She basically has little snippets, very similar to Dear Constance, but they're very, very short. And she speaks over a video she makes of herself getting dressed in the morning. She's quirky and unself-conscious and self-effacing. It is so great and so inspiring, and I just love it. It's a great illustration that we can make art out of anything. Our life is a tapestry, and the weave we choose, the color, the texture, the pattern, how we share it, and whether we want to be loud or quiet is ours to decide. I think it's fair to say that both Heidi and I choose to live our lives out loud. That's all for today. Until next time, from my heart to yours.